1045 The Team, our friend Field Yates, brought to you by Mohawk Army Navy. Field, first things we hear this morning, Justina Anderson's got an anonymous Giants player telling her McAdoo's lost the team, all this other stuff. What do you make of that report?
Well, let's start here. First of all, Josina is an intrepid reporter for us at ESPN who does an incredible job.
Right.
So obviously when Josina reports something, you take it seriously. And when you hear something of this nature, it makes you wonder about the culture right now for the New York Giants. Whether every player feels as though Ben McAdoo has lost the locker room may be inconsequential. If a portion of them feel that way, then it's certainly major news and something that will monitor the rest of the story.
Field, when you hear Golick this morning, I was shocked. The big man lost it on the anonymous source. Not so much he's like, much like you. He said, "Yeah, listen, if Justina says it, I buy it. She's great." But he was mad at the player. Does it matter? I mean, you've been in the front office. Does it matter whether it's the player or the coach, or is it just this much turmoil means we're all in big trouble?
Well, I mean, does it matter? Listen, I think I understand the frustration of people. I understand why people feel as though going off the record is, it's whether it lacks nobility or however you want to put it. I get why people would get frustrated by that, obviously, right? Put your name to something if you mean it. At the same time, like, if a player says something on the record of the nature that the coach has lost the locker room, that player may not be around in the locker room for very much longer. So you can understand why some conversations do take place off the record as opposed to on it.
There are injuries across the New York Giants, guys missing time, a lot of inactives last week. But because of those injuries, is there still a chance we see Ben McAdoo and Jerry Reese back for the New York Giants in 2018?
Yeah, I think it's too soon to tell one way or the other, guys. I think it's too soon to tell whether or not they will necessarily be back or gone. I understand why there's so many questions. And listen, the bottom line is that any team that struggles to a 1-7 start to begin the season is going to be on the hot seat, the coach and the GM, especially when you factor the GM has been around for a while and some people have been frustrated with recent moves. And then on the offensive side, being so inept this year with Ben McAdoo, an offensive-minded head coach, that certainly is something that's going to cause a lot of strife and certainly strike up a lot of conversation. So I don't know for sure that we have reached a point where it's clear what will happen with these two men. But certainly it's amongst the jobs that we've got sort of flagged right now that everybody is kind of waiting with bated breath to see what happens next.
Field Yates with us right now, 1045 The Team on ESPN Radio. And it's funny because, I've been a proponent of Eli for a long time, but it looks like, maybe it's time for Eli to get out of there, go to a winner right now. Maybe it's time for the Giants to address the quarterback of the future. What do you see in that quarterback situation? Is Eli somebody who could be out next year?
Yeah, I understand why the questions have arisen as well. I think I'm not trying to sort of, play the fence here, but or the fence, I should say, but it depends so much on what happens with everything else involved with the organization. Like, if Ben McAdoo is back, I can't imagine Ben McAdoo wants to go forward with somebody other than Eli Manning as his quarterback. Like, he's played with him or he's coached him, and Eli Manning has played well previously for Ben McAdoo, so I can understand why Ben McAdoo will want to keep Eli Manning exactly where he is. Now, if there's a new head coach or a new front office, they may see things decidedly differently, because if they feel as though it's time to sort of press reset on this franchise and the trajectory of this franchise, then anything is on the table as it pertains to a quarterback, especially one that is right now 37 years old. So certainly Father Time eventually catches up to all players.
You can hear the New York Jets this Sunday right here on 1045 The Team. Our coverage gets underway at noon. Kickoff set for 1 o'clock. The Jets take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And quarterbacking the Buccaneers will be a former Jets quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick. For the Jets, what was a better matchup, playing Fitzpatrick now or playing an injured Jameis Winston?
Listen, I think it's sort of unfair to ask that question as it pertains to Jameis Winston, right? Obviously a quarterback's not 100% is going to be something that, as a defense puts itself you're in a more advantageous situation. But I think you'd almost always rather see the backup quarterback as opposed to the starter. So in this case, playing Ryan Fitzpatrick is one that I think this Jets defense should feel comfortable in. They are certainly familiar with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I can imagine that turnovers will be the point of emphasis this week for the Jets in practice.
Do you think there'll be a little added motivation since he was there, the last 2 years?
I don't know about that, guys. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick's probably pretty beloved by the Jets, right? Never did anything malicious there. He is gone because he played poorly. It's not like he walked out on bad terms or didn't seem to have a very good rapport with his fellow teammates. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is probably pretty respected by Jets players especially for what he helped them do 2 years ago when that team was – they were right there in the mix, guys. You know, like that was a team that a couple of years ago was playing for the playoffs in Week 17 of the season.
Field Yates with us right now, 104.5 the team, Levack and Goz. Field, Jameis Winston, he is out this week. He instigates a little mess between, ends up being Mike Evans getting suspended for a week as well. What's the story going to be on Jameis Winston? Is he going to be regarded as a franchise quarterback, or is he going to be one of those guys that just could never get it all right?
I tend to think the former. I think he's got an abundance of talent. I think he's got unique leadership skills. I understand that he's, there's some, that pregame speech he gave with, sort of licking his chops, almost literally, like not for everybody. But I think Jameis has got a bunch of talent. I think that as we see in the NFL, like quarterback trajectory can change year to year. But I still think I buy enough of Jameis's ability on the field to think that he's going to end up being a player you build your offense and your franchise around for years to come. Not a guy that you consider a bust when you sort of evaluate the totality of his career.
Let's move on over to fantasy football. In 2 quarterback leagues, and for some leagues that are having bye weeks continuing to approach for teams, are quarterbacks like Jimmy Garoppolo and even Teddy Bridgewater worth owning in leagues?
I would say this. Jimmy Garoppolo probably not worth rostering right now. We don't even know when he'll be the starter for the San Francisco 49ers. And I think same goes for Teddy Bridgewater. It sort of depends on the depth of your league. I rostered Teddy Bridgewater earlier today because I have Case Keenum as my backup quarterback, and if Keenum gets benched, then all of a sudden I have a different backup quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. But I think that both of those players are not players that you need to rush to roster right away.
Phil, this Teddy Bridgewater story, I remember when he goes down in practice and we don't see the video and they stop practice, and there was some reports that it could be an extremely serious leg injury. I thought he'd never play again. If he does get out there and he is a productive quarterback, is this one of the great comeback stories of all time?
It's certainly a great story. A player that had such a promising start to his career, and the injury, the circumstances are so innocuous, right? Like basically a walkthrough during practice, and next thing you know, he's out for what amounts to, I'm doing the math right, 14 or so months. It's a great story. It's a testament to how hard he has worked. He's got immense football character. He's certainly got plenty of talent. So I think that the Vikings, if nothing else, are thrilled to have Teddy Bridgewater back around that locker room and on the practice field. No denying his desire to be out there with his teammates.
All right, Field, when it comes to fantasy, got any hidden gems out there, some guys that you're keeping an eye on that you think nobody's noticing?
I'd say at this point of the year, there aren't a lot of names that people aren't familiar with, but I do think it's important to remember that players like Greg Olsen and Danny Woodhead, who are widely available on ESPN.com, are eligible to return as soon as Week 11 for Woodhead and Week 12 for Greg Olsen. So those are the kind of players that I would be rostering right now if I wanted to sort of look ahead to the last quarter or the last 6 games of the season.
I love it. Field Yates with that sneaky information that we weren't thinking about, and that's why we reach out to you every week. We appreciate you and hope you have a great weekend.
All right, guys, you too.